Good evening. Thank you to everyone for joining us tonight for a special webinar titled Mid-Career Academic Surgeons, How to Keep the Academic Fire Going, hosted by the SSAT Research Committee. My name is Young Hong, and I'm from Cooper University Hospital, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleagues, Dr. Pooja Ketan from MedStar Georgetown Hospital and Dr. Maria Altieri from University of Pennsylvania. Just a little background about the SSAT, a plug. SSAT, our society mission is to lead in advancing the science and practice of gastrointestinal surgery with the vision of a global community of GI surgeons advancing research, innovation, and advocacy to benefit interdisciplinary patient care. Just to also advertise to the candidate membership and the med students, the membership fee for the society for all that it offers is extremely cheap with $20. And I think that it really allows us to attract a lot of candidates and med students for this type of society. The benefits, again, are that you get a subscription Journal of Gastrointestinal Surgery, discounts to the annual SSAT and Digestive Disease Week, which would be held in Chicago in May of 2023. It also allows you to apply for awards and grant scholarships and travel fellowships through the society. And as there's plenty of leadership opportunities in the society, and it's an exciting time to join this wonderful society. We are honored to host a panel of premier leaders of academic medicine tonight. Dr. Vikas Dudeja from University of Alabama, Dr. Justin Dimmick from University of Michigan, and Dr. Jennifer Seng from Boston Medical Center, and Dr. Ann Fabrizio from Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. For those of you joining us tonight, we will have a Q&A session at the end of our talk, so please type in your questions during the session so my co-moderators and myself can pose your questions to the panel. As with all webinar recordings, a copy will be available for those of you who have registered for the talk tonight. And we want to give acknowledgements to our fearless leader, Dr. Wadabi Arifai, our committee chair of the research committee, for evening a webinar, and to our guest speakers who have dedicated their time in their busy schedule to really devote time to give us a talk tonight on how to build the fire of academic medicine going. And finally, to Beverly, thank you so much for all you do for the society. I know there's so much going on with limited resources, but thank you again for all that you do. And with no further ado, I'll turn it over to Dr. Ketan.
Hello and good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us and taking the time. I will introduce Dr. Seng, who is our first speaker. Dr. Seng is Professor and Chief of Surgical Oncology at BI Deaconess Medical Center and Harvard Medical School. Interests include—
No, that's an old one. Sorry, I'm not. I don't know where that came from. My secretary sent you an old bio, but I'm the chair of surgery at Boston Medical Center and BU. But thank you. That makes me 5 years younger, 5.5 years younger. I appreciate that. I'm sorry. I'm sure Iniola, who's brand new, is wonderful. I sent you the wrong bio.
I see. He is the current president of SSAT, founder and past president of Society of Asian Academic Surgery, as well as the deputy editor for JAMA Surgery. With that, I will turn it over. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much for allowing me to speak. And there was already a question in the chat, which I was thrilled by, but I am not driving. My brilliant husband, who's a multiple RON funded cardiology scientist, is driving. We're going to my daughter's back to school insurance. Succeed as a mid-career surgeon scientist or surgeon, academic surgery, to choose your partner wisely and pick somebody who will drive while you're doing this webinar. And I even forgot my AirPods, so he has to listen to this entire speech. If you talk about applying for grants and stuff like that, I may ask him his opinion. But thank you. I think I do want to put a plug in for the SSAT. I do. It is an incredibly useful society. It's probably the society which has helped me get ahead in academic surgery more than any other society, no question, in academic surgery. So I did my basic science. I did 3 years of basic science research in my residency. I always intended to be an academic. I loved basic science. And as I was in this basic science, I realized I needed a paper that would get me visibility, or paper, an abstract to get me visibility at a surgical meeting. Or maybe it's not even true. That sounds more pre-planned. I wanted to present something at a surgical meeting and actually hang out with some surgeons, some academic.
I guess that didn't quite work out very well. Maybe you have an issue with her video. It looks like her call dropped off. So hopefully she'll join back in. Looks like she's back in.
Jen, you're muted.
I was making a joke, but I actually said, and that's a secret. That's it. That's a secret to academic success. I'm now on my phone because my computer has lit out. But I will say, pick SSAT. I was told to propose an abstract or send an abstract there because it's a great meeting. It's not expensive, and you get to go to this DDW with all the toys and gadgets and free things and free stockings and food and everything else is part of us. It's a small elite surgical society in a bigger GI world. And you get to meet all the people that refer you patients and that actually do scopes and everything else and all the tools and so I just went there kind of by random. And I have to say, I met people across from my little poster session, people that were august chairs of surgery, and people that Dr. Dimmick and I worked for when we were junior residents. And it was an extraordinary opportunity. So as has been mentioned, it is $20 to join as a trainee. Not very much. I think it's like 100 something as a adult, as a attending member, a full member. And it's many opportunities to cross levels. It's like where you have trainees talk to chairs of surgery and beyond, and you get to talk to gastroenterologists and basic scientists that are doing great research in the field of GI disease. So anyway, just to put that there. So I will say that my mid-career advancement was very much advanced by the SSAT and the friendships and the connections and the mentors that I found there. So I will say personally, I think there's no secret sauce. I think it's easy to look at people like me and Dr. Deja and Dr. Al-Rafai and Dr. Dimmick and Dr. Fabrizio as people that have like made it, and then we had some plan and we had some overarching, it was just boxes to check to move up in academic surgery. I don't think it's like that, because every life that you look at, there's a lot of serendipity. There's a lot of reasons. Like the reason why I'm actually still in Greater Boston, in Boston proper now, is honestly because of marital decisions. I found somebody that I really wanted to be with, and they wanted to have their career in Boston. We have a 2-career family, and that's how it is. But that actually has led to more opportunities, perhaps with a more limited geographic scope than if I had every single opportunity. And so I think limitations and decisions that you make on behalf of your family, on behalf of whatever is important to you, I think are important. So I think when I was young, growing up in surgery, I sort of saw people as golden people, usually golden boys, and they had their opportunity, and it had to be this way. And now I realize that you need more flexibility to get ahead. That being said, I think for academics, people in the SSAT and people that are going to join the SSAT, the coin of the realm is a combination of some area of clinical excellence or expertise, or at least thought leadership, having some credibility as a clinical surgeon that cares for patients, or that this helps people care for patients, some academic credibility in the form of papers and grants, and then some other. So participation in surgical societies like the SSAT, meeting people that are outside your comfort zone. And so if there was one message I would want to leave you with for my part, it is diversify who you talk to. Diversify your team, diversify who you talk to. I could spend all day going to meetings in which I only talked about the left pancreas or the right pancreas and whether or not leaving a drain, 2 drains, 0 drains, 1 drain is the most important problem. Now, I'm not diminishing the importance of pancreatic surgery, but if I thought that was the only important issue in the world, I would never have been able, I think, to lead a division of surgical oncology and now to lead a department of surgery and be the surgeon in chief at a hospital that obviously includes ortho and OMFS. And I think to be able to love all your children or your colleagues equally is very important. And so the earlier on that you can diversify your skill set to respect health services research as much as you respect basic science, or respect people that are clinical heavy hitters and figure out how to help them, even if they're never going to publish a major paper, I think that was very important. And so to learn that early on and to think about how what is going to help your team, what's going to help your mentors, what's going to help your boss, what's going to help your institution. I think thinking outside your own career to some extent is actually extremely helpful in advancing as a mid-career professional. Now I realize that some people are watching this people are watching this later, but if there's anybody who actually wants to put a question in the chat, I'm now on my phone because I lost my computer. So if somebody wants to look at the chat, and I will apologize, the order is mixed up because I wasn't sure. I thought we would already be at the school at this point, but we're in traffic, so that's why I'm going first.
No, thank you. Thank you for that insight. I wanted to ask you a question. Being a mid-career surgeon myself, I've been told time and time again, find a niche. Can you speak to that extent for somebody to build a career?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question? I'm sorry, Pooja.
No, I was saying, so, I was advised early in my, which I thought was good advice, was to make sure you find your niche in whatever field you go in. At first, you try to focus on everything, but then as you grow in your career, you want to establish a niche so that you can become a leader in that field. Can you speak a few words about that?
Yeah, I think that's true, but I think it's different depending on where you're at. I started my career at UMass, and if I had been snobby at UMass when I started and said, you know what, I only want to take care and help people with pancreas problems, I think that would have been, I don't think they would have hired me, honestly. If I were somebody who insisted on having a basic science lab, which I actually wanted to do, and I think that I wouldn't have gotten a job in my desired geographic location. And I think these things are important. Like your career doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists with your family, what your interests are. And so I do think as we get older, we all do niche down, as it were. But in the beginning, you kind of want to decide what you love to do and what you can do, you're good at and you're good enough at, and then what you really don't want to do. So I will say that I'm a trained surgical oncologist. I knew I had a passion eventually for the pancreas, but when I was interviewing for jobs, and honestly, I will say that this is the SSAT, but still, I trained in surgical oncology. I did 3 months of really interesting and important breast surgery when I was in my fellowship. Did I rule out doing breast surgery as part of my job? As a woman, I like breast surgery. I think it's very interesting, and the patients are certainly need help, and they really like empathic doctors. And actually, once you do a fellowship, you realize this is actually technically very interesting. There's actually science behind the cases. There's science in breast surgery as opposed to pancreas surgery. They can't do as many randomized clinical trials with the power at the end as you can in breast and melanoma. So did I rule out doing some breast as part of my practice when I was looking for jobs in a very specific geographic location? Absolutely not. But as a woman, I didn't want to be a majority breast surgeon because I knew that I would become an entirely breast surgeon. And I did want to work on GI and HPV. So, but I will say then, with that caveat, they didn't need me to do I was a pancreas surgeon, but I was going to take, I will say, surgical oncology call. And I covered everything, on call, but I also did trauma surgery. I covered trauma because I had done a 6-month super chief job at the general, and that you're on 24/7 for all surgery, but you're on 1 in 4 for trauma. So I actually felt qualified to do trauma, not surgical critical care, but I felt qualified to do trauma. So I did it. I did it to build my practice. You can bet that every lap appy I did my first couple of years of it, I would call the referring surgeon. And this is in Worcester. I don't know anybody. I would call them and stay on the line, and I would talk to the physician, and I would say, "Hi, I'm Jennifer Singh. I did your appy. Your patient's doing fine. And by the way, I'm very interested in pancreatic cysts and conditions. Please send me any patients that you have." And I would get their cell phone and their email, and that's actually how I built a practice. And then when people would keep sending me general surgery things, eventually, like I didn't feel at a certain point, unlike Dr. Dimmick or people on this call, I didn't feel comfortable doing that I had equipoise in doing laparoscopic versus open inguinal hernias. I felt like I could do an open inguinal hernia at that time quite well. I was extremely well trained, but to do a laparoscopic inguinal hernia in 2005, I'd only done maybe 5 in residency, and I just didn't feel it was the best for me to do that, and I didn't want to be like some of my older colleagues that did hernias, but they only offered people open hernias, because I didn't think that was great equipoise. So it's at some point, it wasn't initially, but at some point, 3 or 4 years in, I started to learn to say, when people would call me because they found me as a helpful doctor, I would say, "You know what? Absolutely, I'm happy to help you with your patient that needs an inguinal hernia repair. You know who's best at this? Don Cherniak at UMass is great at inguinal hernias. I'll take all your information. My secretary will get his secretary information, and he'll call you with an appointment." And I would send an email. And this was perfect, because then I started to narrow down. I was doing transanal rectal excisions at that time when I started. And the more I was struggling with the the Lone Star retractor, trying to see and resect some little tumor in the, in this location that the sun don't shine, I was struggling enough with that. I learned to send them to my friend Justin Minkle, and he was happy. They were happy to send me all their pancreas stuff, and that was sent to them. And that's how I niched down at a center that didn't have a lot of support and wanted me originally to start out as a not really a specialist. I was a surgical oncologist, but I was a general surgeon at that point. So I think it's different. I think if you're in Michigan or you're in Wisconsin, or this is my imagination, but at some place where they hire you to be the expert in the left pancreas only, and maybe that's true, but I think it's decent advice for anybody.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for your talk. We'll move on to the next for Dr. Dudeja.
I will hide my video, but I'm still here.
All right, so our next speaker is Dr. Vikas Dudeja, who's a
great. Thank you.
Dr. Dudeja is a tenured associate professor of surgery and the James P. Hayes Jr. Endowed Professor in Gastrointestinal Surgery and the director of the Division of Surgical Oncology at the University of Alabama. He received his medical education at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences before completing his general surgery residency at the University of Minnesota and finished his surgical oncology fellowship at the Memorial Sloan Kettering. He is an accomplished surgeon scientist with the NIH-funded laboratory focusing on the immune and stromal biology of pancreatic cancer and other HPV malignancies. We are very excited to hear his talk titled, "Is it too late to start a research lab?" Thank you again, Dr. Dudeja.
Well, Dr. Hong, Ketan, Altiri, and Al-Rafai, I really appreciate the invitation to come and speak and express my views. And it's really a privilege to share the podium with all the other luminaries. So my talk title is it too late to start a research lab? The obvious answer is it is really not. So I'm gonna, over this talk, discuss few of the issues which I think we should think about as we get into starting a new research lab as a mid-career or at any level, actually. So we all value research because it has the potential to change not the life of the patients which we are immediately taking care of, but also of future patients and changing the field. It provides intellectual satisfaction. We are mentoring the future leaders and helping shape their career, but it's also the third leg of the academic mission, and it's very important for promotion and tenure. So that's why research, I think, is a very, very important piece. And now, over the last couple of decades, the research has evolved just from being a basic science. If you did not have a basic science lab, then you were not doing real research. Now there are many shades of research. There can be a database review where you're looking at administrative and institutional databases. You're looking at studying biomarkers and evaluation of uh, prospectively collected specimens. You can design and conduct clinical trials or participate in them. You can provide greater insight into delivery of healthcare as well as the problems with it and offer solutions as health services research. Or you could shape the surgical field all over the world through global surgery research. But needless to say, sometimes things don't go as planned. And there are multiple issues which we face all around us, including inadequate support from your peers or from leadership, unexpected life events, or excessively busy practice, which can really derail the research career early on. But is it possible to restart again? Absolutely it is. I do want to point this out because we see around ourselves and we look at the tip of the iceberg, which is the success of other people, but what we don't see is what all they have gone through. And I would say that many of us are going through many of the issues which other people face, and there are solutions which can be offered. So once we are starting the research career as a mid-level or even as early on, the three things that you need to think about is the research question, the pathways. Are you going to go alone or are you going to collaborate? Or what are the resources and how do we get them? The research question, of course, everybody has to find their own research question, but I do want to mention just a few pointers. I would highly advise that the research question has to align with your overall practice. For example, if you're a bariatric surgeon, then you should maybe look at issues which can, pertain to the population of patients that you take care of. And I'm actually a living example of this problem. As Dr. Hong mentioned, that I have a research program looking into pancreatic cancer, but I also have a research program looking at pancreatitis, regeneration, and devising novel therapies to treat those. And that creates a real struggle because, when I'm discussing my cancer research or cancer research program, I'm going to certain meetings. Wherein I'm discussing pancreatitis, I'm going to other meetings and talking to a different group of researchers. So that really creates duplicity and really create a lot of stress on the time management. So my recommendation is really look for a research focus which really aligns with your overall practice. Don't try to solve the cancer in one day, and try to really find out what the final goal is and finding a bite-sized problem which you can address over next year or two and really focus on that. And always play to your strengths. For example, we all as surgeons have availability of tissues of various kinds as our strength. We have industry partnership and also special techniques, which I'm going to talk about a little bit in a little. Then, are you going to be the lone rider or are you going to be answering the research question as a team? Now, given our busy schedules, surgical research programs have a higher chance of success if we go as a team. So think about collaboration. Now, some of the collaboration development strategies include, leveraging your strengths. For example, as I mentioned, easy availability and access to tissues is the strength of surgeons. For example, as bariatric surgeons, we have a lot of normal stomach or intestine available. As colorectal surgeons, you could have normal colonic tissues available to you, available as part of either surgery or even colonoscopy. Transplant surgeons can help get access to normal donor tissue. And this is a very important resource which many collaborating individuals don't have. So leverage that as your strength. Well, how about not only as a tissue, but always as a novel ideas? So there may be a lab which is looking at wound healing and other factors affecting wound healing as an area of expertise. even though you don't want to change the direction of research of your collaborators, but providing a different clinical context. For example, post-surgery adhesions is a kind of a wound healing which has gone awry. So, by providing the context of how important these post-surgery adhesions are, you can form a collaboration and also a research program. This is one example. So all the research in pancreatic cancer is focused on giving tumors into the mice and then treating them as if a metastatic disease or locally advanced disease. Because I'm involved in surgery, so we developed this project where we implanted tumors and then did surgery on these mice the second time and then followed them for recurrence. So by giving your clinical context, you can really spearhead a clinical project and really give a direction and value to your collaborators. The other important aspect, our strength, is access to the patients. We can help recruit patients into a clinical trial or even collaborate with different labs and individuals to help them collect specimens prospectively as well as enroll patients in their protocol or have your independent IRB studies. Unique procedures. So I'll give you a very interesting example. So when you are studying Barrett's esophagus in mice, you actually have to do an anastomosis between the esophagus and their jejunum by using 7 or 8 prolines. And there was this investigator who at University of Miami who was looking for a collaborator, and we connected this individual to a thoracic surgeon, and they were able to launch this project together and get a R1 funding with the thoracic surgeon as a co-investigator. So we have access to unique procedures as well as technology which can be offered and which can enhance the research of the collaborators and can grow both the groups together. Now we have also technologies like ablations, colonoscopies, ultrasound evaluation. So leverage your strength, and you can always look for collaboration and be co-investigators on various projects. The other area is that, as surgeons, we have a lot of patients who are thankful to whatever comfort that we have provided to them, and some of them have significant needs and can be a source of philanthropy. And this can also help jumpstart the research career and collaborations. And I'll discuss this a little bit more later on. So how to look for collaborations? Well, there are a lot of seminars and research meetings happening throughout your campus. You can actually join the email list, and then you can find out if a particular talk looks interesting, go and listen to it, and that can lead to finding out how you can collaborate. Ask your mentors at your institute, I have this interest. Do you know of anybody, a lab who is which is looking into this specific area or something related to this area? And you can directly approach the principal investigators or have your mentors introduce you. And also looking at departmental website at the engineering school, looking at the health services research groups and finding out what different areas, what different groups have similar interest. I would mention that, if you're looking for collaboration, you have to really put your best foot forward, be on time for meetings, contribute. If you promise that you're going to do something, then meet deadlines. If you say you're going to help provide tissue, then write the IRB. It's really not that hard. And be respectful, because both the teams are really trying to bring a value to the collaborations. So the resources, right? If you're launching your research career, whenever you are early on or as a mid-career, you need personnel and you require funds. There's a lot of help as personnel you can get from residents who are on service or as on research rotations. Medical students who are looking for a career in surgery can help out with an art project or looking for a database. Even now, in the current world of Zoom, we are not all together, but we are having this discussion. Things teleconferencing or video conferencing like Zoom can really make it easier. Also, don't do it yourself. Look for a group. This is a picture of our endocrinology group, where there are medical students, international students. They are actually, this point of time, they are on Zoom. They are discussing cases and putting all these papers together. So please join a group. What about funds? Well, in old times, all one could think of is the NIH, funding sources. But there are a lot of non-NIH source of fundings, which can be substantial, which bring significant indirect. So the chairs like Dr. Sang and Dr. Dimick really like it because they bring indirect to the department, and it helps bring a track record. It doesn't have to be significant. You have to start so that it looks good on your CV, and any small grant helps you get the next level of funding. And every little bit helps. A higher level of support, for example, researcher 5 instead of 1, with much more talent as compared to lower level of help. Where are the various sources? Well, local sources I'll talk about, philanthropy and societies. There are other fundings like Department of Defense. I would really recommend you looking at this. Some states like Texas as well as Florida have state level funding and various foundations. So look at the local opportunities. Cancer centers as well as various institutes at your center definitely will be offering some institutional grants. There's clinical and translational science awards at every institute, and there are various centers. For example, microbiome center, obesity center, GI disease centers have smaller grants, and they really prefer having clinicians getting more involved, so applying for grants as a COI. There can be a substantial private sector funding, pharmaceutical companies and medical device companies, for example, Ethicon, Covidian. If you have a project related to their device, they're always finding mechanisms to help fund you because they really value you and your use of their products. Now, if you're doing health services research, various insurance companies and even hospital systems. For example, Health Services Foundation at UAB is funding multiple small projects, and 2 of those projects are actually in our division, where they're answering the use of various services. So please look for those opportunities. I'll give an example. So there was this company, Surflex, which actually makes various assays to help device personalized care, and they needed access to tissue. And so they approached us, and we were able to kind of come up with a mechanism where they were able to fund one of our junior surgeon scientists. As I mentioned, philanthropy can be a big source of developmental dollars. For this, you have to be ready. You never know when an opportunity is gonna really strike. So you get to know your developmental people, meet them on a routine basis, and they can help you identify patients who will be willing to sponsor small projects, and which can then evolve into bigger level of funding. To give an example, our Reed Foundation in Birmingham area really sponsors a lot of research in our division as well as in department. And this all started because there was a family which was very thankful for the services we had provided, and that has evolved into a relationship where they fund research up to $140,000 a year. So be on a lookout. There are various surgical societies, including Society of Society, or SSAT, sponsors various grants. There are subspecialty societies as well as non-surgical societies. So be on a lookout. Any area that you are investigating, there is a society which is funding that research. So you gotta look. So my 2 cents, apply, get your foot in the door, and never ever give up. At this point, I will stop, and I'll be very happy to take any questions.
Thank
So
you.
thank-
Young.
I was going to ask one question, but we can. So, Dr. Deja, your accomplishment is pretty impressive, but can you just give us an insight into how you decided to be a basic science researcher, and what point did you realize that was your path?
So, in 2005, I came off the boat Of course, I was born and, educated in India. And I actually was at Dr. Sang's previous institute. It was University of Massachusetts. And I was doing master's in public health. I thought that was my calling. To support my expenses, I joined the group of my mentor, Dr. Saluja. And I just started liking basic science a lot. And I actually stopped the master's in public health course and started doing basic science as a full-time thing. So it really stimulated me. Um, it- so basically, it was serendipity. I just happened to be at a one place where I started doing something which was really enjoyable, and then I spent next 3 years pursuing that passion. So as I was showing that, the iceberg where you look at the success and you say, wow, must have done everything right. Actually, this is 90% of the time, it's all failures and lost opportunities. So just a serendipity, I would say.
Thank you.
Well, great talk, Dr. Dudeja, and thank you so much for all your wisdom. So good evening, everyone. I have the pleasure of introducing our next speaker, Dr. Justin Dimick. Dr. Dimick is the Frederick A. Koller Professor and Chair of the Department of Surgery at the University of Michigan. He is a national leader in the areas of health services research and delivery of care. He's also very well known nationally, internationally through his work with various societies such as AAS, SUS, AWS, ACS, SAGES, SSAT, amongst many others. I can't imagine anyone better to discuss the topic promotion, national and international. Dr. Dimick.
All right, well, thank you for the introduction and welcome everybody. Can you guys see my slides okay? Are they projecting in the appropriate way? I see a thumbs up there. Well, I do have some slides and I'm going to spend a little bit of time. I'm just going to talk to you about a few kind of philosophical points that I think are relevant to academic surgery, and especially when you're thinking about your research career. And then I'm going to give you some examples and tell you some stories about some people that I mentor that I think have done a great job at developing during their mid-career phase as a scientist. So first, I'm a big believer, and a value that I hold dear is that organizations achieve their potential by harvesting their people's potential. There's a golden nugget on this slide because I like to say that everybody has a golden nugget inside of them, and it's my job as a leader and as a mentor to help bring that forth and add value to the world. And so you'll see me alluding to the golden nuggets that people are bringing forth in different parts of their academic career. I also think that there's no such thing as a triple threat academic anymore. This is pretty common, right? I think everybody is starting to realize that if you want a great division or a great department, you need people that are really good at every niche, right? We need different people occupying very deep expertise, very different niches where they develop different expertise to truly be excellent as a department. You can be a triple threat and be kind of average at everything, I think, but like to be really excellent, we need specialization. And so I think about the modern academic department looks more like Darwin's finches than it does like the kind of like mythology of superheroes, which I think we used to promulgate. When I think about tracks here in our own department, we have so many different ways that you can achieve promotion. I'm going to actually talk about promotion briefly since this is about promotion. But we used to have one track, and now we have clinician educators, we have clinician leader administrators, we have people who can specialize in patient safety quality, and we have recently added one that hasn't quite made it to the website yet on diversity, equity, inclusion as a specialty. And then there's clinician individualized, which basically means like if you can figure out a way to add value through your niche, like please tell us how you did that and we'll promote you. I think that most places are kind of broadening their perspective on promotion. I mean, I think about this as precision phenotyping. When you look at yourself, what unique talents and interests do you have, and how can you bring those forth? Like, what is your golden nugget? And so these are the people I'm going to talk about. These are people that I mentor in my department who all have had great mid-career success in different phenotypes: Erica Newman, Dana Tellem, Catherine Gallagher, and Amir Ghaffari. And I'm going to revisit each of them and talk about a principle that they demonstrate. But first, I'm going to talk to you a little about structured. As a department chair, I think about how can I structure my department to serve these individuals? And I'm going to talk about how to structure a formal mentorship program for mid-career faculty that allows you to help people harvest their golden nuggets. So I'm not going to talk a lot about launch teams because these are generally for junior faculty, and this talk is about mid-career faculty. But we do have launch teams in our department for all new faculty, and a lot of people know about the concept of launch teams and how they're structured. But the idea is that you have structured team-based mentorship, so everybody has access to it, which addresses a lot of inequities that arise when you allow for kind of informal networks for mentorship to flow along informal networks. So it's really great, and I think that the goal of this is different than a mid-career mentorship team, which I'm going to talk about in a second. This is about growing you as a clinician, as a scholar, as a teacher, and I think this is really about career development. And when I think about faculty development pathway, your academic development when you first start out, when you're getting launched, is all about you. But the associate professor, it's really about how do you want to serve others? How are you going to start to think about mentorship and building programs that serve other faculty, other trainees, medical students, whatever it is? It's really not about you. So we think about mid-career as a time where you're learning to leverage your talent across others and to assist others. And so we developed a program we call Boost Teams, which is specifically designed for mid-career faculty after promotion to associate professor to think about leadership. How are you going to start serving others in the organization? And we have 3 phases. We think about phenotyping, that kind of precision phenotyping, and goal setting around that. Like, what types of roles, who are your role models, and what types of roles do you want to have? How do we map a trajectory to that place, which means developing specific competencies usually. And then how do we engage in sponsorship for existing opportunities, or job crafting, creating opportunities, project-based opportunities for people to develop and exercise those competencies. So we have a handbook from this that, if you're interested, you can download from our website. But it's loosely based on this book, which I really enjoyed reading, and you probably would too. It's called The 5 Patterns of Extraordinary Careers, and it has these 5 principles. And rather than just tell you what these principles are, I figured I would show you through those examples, individuals that I mentioned earlier. So this is Amir Ghaffari. Many of you know Amir. He is our chief clinical officer of our medical group now. He's had 2 promotions since I made this slide. But now he just recently has been recruited to Medical College of Wisconsin to be their chief physician executive, or president of their physician enterprise. And the thing about Amir is he always knew that he's good at managing processes and in complex organizations. And because of that, he has sort of moved rapidly through healthcare administration. I think that's really important. Understanding what your strengths are and leveraging those strengths is really important. So this is what Dr. Tellem. Many of you know Dr. Tellem. She recently was actually not recently, now over a year, is named our chief of general surgery, which is a unit of 50 surgeons. And if you know Dr. Tellem, you'll know that she is really good at clinical operations, and she's really good at making clinical programs grow and thrive. But the interesting thing to me was, no sooner than she became our interim chief, which she was during the pandemic, she immediately became a fierce advocate for everyone in her faculty. Right? It wasn't about her career. We never talked about her career. It was all immediately. The day she stepped into this role, it was like, this basic scientist needs additional money for this. This person needs better mentorship, right? And it was just a fierce, and that's benevolent leadership. If you start exercising your development of others, it's recognized. This is a really important principle, this notion that, how do you get a job if you've never had the opportunity to prove you can do the job? And so this to me is about getting small, kind of bite-sized opportunities to lead and demonstrate your competencies. Dr. Newman here is now our chief of pediatric surgery. But before that, she served in a lot of different roles. She was our vice chair for faculty development. She served as chief clinical officer of our medical group, and it really engaged in transformational change for both our department and for our institution around faculty development, fostering diversity, engaging with our medical group, and expanding into serving in a more equitable way. And through all of those things, she demonstrated her leadership capacities, even though she had never been a division chief. And so this is the catch-22 of getting these jobs. And, Dr. Zhang has done this, right? She was a division chief, you demonstrate certain competencies, you become a chair, right? And you exercise those competencies on a bigger scale. So those smaller roles are really important, and having sponsors to help craft those experiences is really important. This is another principle that I think is really important, this 20-80 principle of performance. So Catherine Gallagher here, Dr. Gallagher is my vice chair for basic and translational science. And when I became chair, she came to me and said, I want to be a dean. And Kathy is a really accomplished basic scientist and doesn't want to be a chair, she wants to be a dean. And so we talked about this principle in particular. Okay, you're really good at your job, you're a vascular surgeon, you're really good at doing, you have a great niche delivering that care, you're a great scientist, your lab runs great. Once you get those things running, that should take about 80% of your time. And then you have 20% of your time to allocate to something else, to grow, to sharpen your skills in a different area. And if she wants to be a dean, she needs to learn how to manage other people's space and competes for space at the institutional level. She needs to understand how to bridge people's labs and help them get off the ground. And she can exercise that by helping others with that 20% of her time that she's gained from being really good at her job. Her day job, it only takes 80% of your time. And so you kind of combine this 20-80 principle of like, I'm really efficient, I can now dedicate my time to other people to serve. That's called leadership. You combine that with the last principle, which is this notion of job crafting to create opportunities to develop competencies. And that's when you can really start to thrive. And then this is Nabil. So you may or may not know Nabil. He was the first surgeon we hired at a community hospital. And it was a really important strategic program for our health system because our main hospital ORs were just totally stuffed with patients, and the utilization is really high, people waiting in the ERs, those types of things. And we purchased half of a community hospital, and he came in, and his gift is just emotional intelligence. He gets along with people. People trust him, and he built a really thriving surgical program over there. Now has multiple surgeons, multiple specialties. We have a full resident complement over there. And he worked with a private hospital and the leadership there and bridged that with the university. And just, everyone thinks the world of his leadership because of that kind of superpower that he has. And I think that's kind of finding what you're good at and how you can deploy that is kind of one other principle of that golden nugget hypothesis. So I'll leave you there. These are kind of my thoughts on career development, precision phenotyping, and then as department chair, what structures and programs can I put in place to make sure that everyone has opportunity to that development. So thank you.
Sorry, I was having a little trouble there. Thank you, Dr. Dimick. That was such an uplifting talk. And yes, you're right. Harnessing on people's strength is so important. And so many chairs actually really don't see value of many of the faculty members, which makes it a very difficult environment to grow. So thank you for all those pertinent points. Moving on for the interest of time, moving on to our last talk with Dr. Fabrizio. She's talking about women and underrepresented minorities. Dr. Fabrizio is a colorectal surgeon at BID Kidness, Boston, and a teaching facility at Harvard Medical School. She serves as an associate program director for general surgery residency and is heavily involved in both institutional and divisional DEI committees. She's also involved in the DEI committee for the American Society of Colorectal Surgeons nationally. Thank you for being here, Dr. Fabrizio.
Thank you for the opportunity to present today. It's been a pleasure listening to everyone else's talks. I'll try to keep this brief. It's a topic that I enjoy talking about, but one day I hope to not need to. So diversity, we're talking about women and underrepresented minorities in surgery in particular. What do we need to know? So starting off, why does diversity matter in healthcare? We've seen that racial and ethnic minority groups are at disproportionate risk of being uninsured, lacking access to care, and just overall experiencing worse health outcomes from preventable and treatable conditions. Social determinants of health are also a major factor for these groups, including housing quality, access to healthy foods, and education. And there is a lot of evidence that shows that gender and racial concordance between providers and patients has been associated with improved outcomes. So why do we need to increase our diversity in our healthcare? It's at the end of the day for our patients and our communities. So whenever we talk about diversity, we always talk about the leaky pipeline, especially in surgery. So this is a little bit outdated, but in general, the medical students, there's actually equipoise between men and women. And then as we progress through the ranks and up through training to assistant professorships and associate professorships and up to full professors, there's a huge drop off in women in the surgery pipeline. So I'm going to talk about gender first. So looking at general surgery leadership from education, division chiefs, the vast majority of leadership is male. And that is changing, but at a very slow pace. So if we look at the increase of trainees over time, we're almost at equipoise in some subspecialties for men and women. However, there are other specialties that even within the trainees have quite some time to reach 50-50. It's worse when it comes to academic surgical positions. So reaching a full professor at the rate we're currently at, it may take over a century. So the rate of people reaching full professorship is increasing at a rate disproportionately lower than increases in our medical students and surgery residents. So this is something we actively need to address in order to improve the diversity and representation in our academic medicine. So when it comes to race, essentially the same problem. The vast majority of people in leadership are white and very few Hispanic and Black leadership. So this is mirrored in the corporate world as well. There are fewer women and men of color and women in general compared to men in the C-suite compared to the entry level. Over time, this is decreasing as people progress in their careers. So it's not just isolated to medicine, but it's a society-wide issue. So what are the barriers for women and those who are underrepresented? The cultural climate at our institutions is one of them. Stereotypes and bias that people are facing as they provide clinical care, as they perform their research. And there's also a sense of social isolation for these people, which makes it hard to advance and feel included and find that support to advance. So there's a lack of parity in rank and leadership when it comes to gender and race, as well as an issue of retention within academic medicine. So, where are our role models? Because there are fewer people at the top who look like the trainees, it's hard to see themselves in that role. So really, we need to step up our game and when it comes to mentorship and sponsorship. So just a few definitions to sort of get out of the way that people are facing on a daily basis. Implicit bias is the negative unconscious prejudices, stereotypes, or beliefs held by a person that they may be unaware of having, but may be expressed in a person's actions and attitudes. And building off of that, microaggressions, which are everyday verbal, nonverbal, environmental slights, snubs, or insults, whether intentional or unintentional, which communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative messages to target persons based solely upon their marginalized group membership. So these are things that people are facing on a daily basis, which leads to burnout and, lack of desire to maintain within the academic profile. So in looking at stereotypes and biases, positive assessments as well as perceptions are generally associated with male, older, and white surgeons. So over time, we need to change this. So role models, what are they? Role models are basically people that we can see ahead of us and mirror our careers, aspire to be where they are. So what are trainees and early faculty exposed to? Do they even see that chair position as something that is potentially a possibility for them? When we come to mentorship and sponsorship, so females are less likely to have a mentor than men and often don't find a gender concordant mentor. And it's the same for race. having a mentorship group is known to predict future success. So, you know, and there's a lack of transparency when it comes to promotional standards. Dr. Dimmick had a nice slide about the different tracks for promotion. Not every institution has that. And unfortunately, traditionally, we've undervalued work that's typically done by women and those underrepresented. So all this DEI work is only recently being recognized as something that people can get promoted for. So when it comes to research, there's also disparities in funding. So the number of men and women being funded and then the grant costs doesn't always match up. So this is much clearer when it comes to breast surgery, where the majority of researchers are women. However, most of the funding does not match up with that. So additional burdens that comes into place with female surgeons, there are a lot of reports about increased domestic responsibilities in their male peers. There really aren't a lot of public and institutional supports for people with families. And the United States is just terrible when it comes to early childhood care and education. It's the only developed country without a national paid leave program. And it's unfortunate, but the US women's labor force is actually declining over time compared to other countries. So how do we improve? So what are our strategies for that? A big one is education. So, you know, at our institution, we instituted a climate survey. Where are we? Where do we need to improve? And then training in conscious and unconscious bias and harassment. And this has to happen on a regular basis. And then how do we address these implicit biases and microaggressions? We really need to support each other and go through upstander training. How do we respond to you know, disparities in treatment for our faculty and staff? And then, like I said, transparency. So finding that transparency in promotional standards, what does it require to get to the next level? Are we appropriately compensating people for their administrative tasks and their mentorship and sponsorship? Because these all take time. And then value the work that our women and underrepresented in medicine surgeons are doing. And then there always needs to be auditing and reporting and correction of the disparity in pay. So are we being fair across the board? And then when it comes to mentorship and sponsorship, there should be formalized programs for trainees and faculty, and then recognition for that mentorship in the evaluation for promotion, and hopefully diversifying the mentorship pool. So a mentor does not have to be a surgeon if there are no other surgeons that can serve the role. It can be people outside of the division. It can be across societies. It can be really anyone. There's a lot of ways you can be a mentor and still help each other. So hopefully, you know, with society-wide increasing diverse representation on editorial boards and conferences and leadership positions, and part of that is sponsoring people to those roles. So in conclusion, I just wanted to end with a quote from Maya Angelou: do the best you can until you know better, then when you know better, do better. So hopefully we can implement these changes and do better in the future. Thank you.
That was phenomenal. I don't have any more good words to add to all the knowledge that I gained tonight. I'm certain that people are very excited to know that there's an opportunity that even as mid-career surgeons, you still can find areas where you can grow, start up a lab, become a prominent figure in your field, and eventually get to leadership positions. And as you ended very nicely, succinctly on women and diversity, there's definitely room at the top of the cream. So we all need to strive for it. And as we all leaders who are currently sitting on this committee should become the leaders to promote others and mentor and sponsor our juniors. So thank you for everybody for their time. I didn't see any major questions that came up in the chat that were pertinent that we haven't already addressed. I'll be happy to let anybody else chime in. All right, well, thanks again. Please have a good evening and thanks for attending.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.